5:30. We have a couple things on the agenda this evening. So, how about we start? Oh, here comes wonderful Stacy. I'll wait for her to sit next to me.
I thought you were sitting next to me.
You didn't like that chair.
So am I a rose between two thorns?
Yeah. Well, however you want to interpret that, Miss Thorne.
Or vice versa. Good to see you too. Glad you could show up.
Those are just a sign. Yeah. I was just waiting for Stacy to pull out her stuff. You ready, Stacy? Okay. Hey, everybody. My name's Kurt Meyer. I'm the vice chairman of the Parks and Recreation Committee. What we're doing tonight is we have two meetings. We have one meeting scheduled at 5:30. That meeting is the Park and Rec Commission only. At 6 o'clock, we're going to have a meeting with the Park and Rec Commission meeting and also the open space. And you can see there's not a lot of people here from open space. So we're going to just do that one agenda item for the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. All right. So here we go. How about a call to order and determination of quorum and roll call?
Chairperson Case. Here. Vice Chair Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Schutte.
Here.
Commissioner Whitefield.
Here.
Commissioner Caldwell.
Here.
Commissioner Wilkie McCulloch.
Here.
Commissioner Kiever.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, so the next on the agenda is public comment. And what I would suggest right now is that you're welcome to have public comment, anything that's going on here, but we're going to have this one agenda item on the agreement with the LOMP people on the drainage situation over there. And if you have anything to talk about pertaining to that, it'd be best that you come up and talk about that, or you can wait until after the staff gives their presentation and talk at that time. All right, so do I have any public comment on what we have on the Park and Rec Commission meeting agenda? Come on up, sir.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I came in totally anxious and really worried. And a lot of my concerns and such have been relieved, and I appreciate that. I am not a fan of that development right off the bat, so I had biases I had to overcome. My concerns were basically the fact that I felt that safety had to come first as far as the mitigation type situations. They said they could mitigate the high water table. They said they could mitigate the flood worries, and they've got 4 basins that are going to be coming in. But who would be taking care of those was a big concern for me. Whose responsibility and whose maintenance would be supporting that? And excuse me for not saying thank you, chairs. And the deal is that I feel much more confident on that end, and that it should cost-related, should not be a big issue, but I still have some concerns about the liability of having water spaces in an area that we're, as a city, tending. And once I have those things figured out, I will feel much more relaxed about the whole thing. But I just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I do hope that Mr. Benjamin Johnson could maybe answer my questions about some of the liability, but other than that, I think everything's going well on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else out there? Okay, great. We're going to move to that for possible action, the discussion and possible action regarding recommendation to Carson City Parks and Rec Director concerning the petition filed by the LAMPA LLC and so forth. So Jennifer, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Madam Chair is online virtually, so thank you all for being here. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm going to try to walk you through a little bit of the code and why we're here talking about this item. And then we have Rob Fellows, the Stormwater Manager, to answer any specific questions you have. And we also have the city engineer available as well. So the developers of Lampa Ranch North submitted a petition to create a landscape maintenance district, and you have a copy of that petition in your packet, and it was posted for the public. Carson City Municipal Code 17.18 outlines the processes and procedures to create a landscape maintenance district, or as we call them, an LMD. An LMD is essentially a specific geographic area where fees are assessed to certain properties for improvements that support those properties. An LMD ensures maintenance is kept to an acceptable standard with a sustainable funding source and not an additional financial burden to the city or the citizens. The code requires that an LMD petition be reviewed by city directors and the Parks and Recreation Commission, which is why we're here tonight, before it goes to the Board of Supervisors. I've distributed the petition to city directors, and that feedback is due December 7th. I haven't received any preliminary comments yet from the directors, so unfortunately I don't have that to share with you to help guide your review. Currently, the city has one LMD, Schultz Ranch, which includes parks, trails, common area landscapes, and drainage facilities. While there will be a 10-acre park in the Lampa development, that will be maintained by a private homeowners association and 100% funded by the HOA. It will not be funded by the city for maintenance. There will also be a deed restriction on all the parcels within Lampa that if the HOA ceases to exist, the city can implement an LMD or amend an existing LMD to be able to assess to pay for maintenance. So we do have a backup plan should the HOA go under with landscape maintenance. The park design for that will come back to this board. It hasn't even been started yet. So we will have a public process where the Parks and Recreation Commission can participate and hear public feedback about how we want to envision that park. Before I move forward and turn it over to Rob, we did have a few initial questions already on this item, so I wanted to try to address those right up front. One of the questions was, is an LMD a separate agreement that is executed, and how are the assessments issued? So what would happen is the Board of Supervisors would actually implement the landscape maintenance district. They would take an action with an effective date to create that district. And then how the assessment is processed is through property taxes. So it's another line item on your property tax bill. So if you lived within Lampa Ranch North, you would have a line item based on the assessment schedule in your packet and as they develop. So that's how procedurally that is done. And then someone also asked, is it the city paying for private development? And the answer is no. So the construction of the improvements on site, the drainage facilities in particular, which is what we're talking about tonight, were constructed entirely 100% funded by the development. Then the landscape maintenance district, if that goes forward, will be 100% funded by the folks that live in that development. So it wouldn't be the city subsidizing anything. It wouldn't be the city supplementing what's already being done, but the development itself would have to pay for those improvements and the maintenance of those improvements. So hopefully that helps answer some of your questions. Now I'll turn it over to Rob. He can walk you through the LMD and why that was selected, and then we can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jen. I'm Rob Fellows. I'm your Chief Stormwater Engineer, also your floodplain manager. So you got 2 for 1 tonight. I just want to go over and just explain kind of what, how the system works with a few slides. So on the screen, you see the development before it started and after. Before, it was pretty much all floodplain. There's a little bit of floodway towards the high school. We got 3 different drainages, Kings Canyon, Ash Canyon, VC Canyon, come to this part of the city, and they're all in different channels. And so what the developer did to mitigate and actually be able to build a subdivision, they did plans and went through FEMA and the city and developed 3 separate channels. One that follows East 5th Street, the other one is kind of the midpoint on Robinson Street, and then one to the north that goes around the high school. So just right out here in Mills Park, that's the one that goes around the high school and eventually drains to the north channel. That channel has not been built yet. The other 2 channels have been built, and in fact, the map change for the flood maps has been submitted. And so everything is working, and we're just waiting for FEMA to come back and change the map.
So Rob, just a little on that. When they built the landmark homes in the Northridge area, they had that big lawsuit because they were built on wetlands.
Yes.
Is that mitigated in this plan that they have, that, for future?
So they did go through a process with the Corps of Engineers to identify where the wetlands are. And they're basically not touching those areas, and they're mainly to the north area, and all the way to the north near the casino. And so their plans show that that is being preserved and not being developed on. I can advance this thing, but wait. Okay. So a little bit on the maintenance. Obviously, the main thing about maintenance around here is sediment removal. Over time, that's going to be less and less, but initially, you know, when you do ground disturbance, you're going to have sediment, things need time to stabilize. You're going to have quite a bit different type of vegetation that wants to grow, so we're going to have noxious weed treatments, and obviously pick up trash and other things of that nature. And so it's basic maintenance that we do everywhere, and this will be part of what the subdivision will pay for, and that's what they'll do. So why an LMD? So, you know, really, when it was a ranch, you know, obviously it operated just fine. They farmed it. You know, if it did flood, it was fine. You know, it didn't impact the city. But when it was changed to a subdivision, they had to mitigate that to allow them to build, you know, homes. And they chose to do channels, which works just fine. And so the channels and the way it turned out is part of the subdivision. So it was needed for the subdivision to be there. And so that's why the LMD is here to take care of it, okay? The city has obviously quite a bit of infrastructure, and I was telling Randy, we have probably over 50 basins around town and miles of pipes and open channel that we maintain in various places. And so this is just going to add to it. But the good thing about this is that we'll have funds to take care of this. So one of the other things is as far as being needed and equitable, this is the best mechanism that we found long-term to be able to have everyone participate and assess for maintenance of this kind. So we're really supporting of the LMD rather than an HOA or something like that. See how quick that was? I'm here for any questions. If you'd like to ask me anything, I will answer it.
So with the LMD, does the city still do the work, but it's paid for through the LMD?
So the way we see it is we would hire a contractor and we would go through a process like we do for the freeway landscaping and get a licensed maintenance company to do that, to do the
Okay,
work.
but it's something that is overseen by the city to make sure there's the quality control and that
Yes,
it's done
definitely.
correctly. Great, thank you.
Over by the old Kmart building, in front of that, is that similar to what you're talking about here? And does the landowner do that maintenance, or do the city do that maintenance?
Actually, the landowner maintains that channel.
Okay, that's what I thought, so.
Yes.
Just to get an idea of what was going on. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I did want to let you know that we have a representative from the development too. So if you have any specific questions for them, they are available.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Rob. Why doesn't the representative come on up here and introduce himself and see if we can get any questions out of these people? These commissioners. They're commissioners too.
Hi there. Steve Thompson with Ryder Homes, Vice President for Ryder Homes for questions.
Maybe just a timeline of the development and how these channels will be affected by that.
Well, our portion of the build-out is 360 apartments and roughly 400 houses, single-family. So it's probably, the total build-out timeline's probably 8 years, if I had to guess, on the total build-out timeline. The channels are constructed, they're functional now. They've been operational for quite some time, but the channels are finished, and we'll just build along with the phases as we go along. But it's probably 8 years, if I had to guess. By the time we're finished, I mean, it's quite a few units.
Just a follow-up question real quick. So when would the tax go into effect? And when would we start doing the work, the contracted work?
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So we will make sure that the packet's complete. The next steps are I'll get comments from the city directors. Those are due by September 7th. I'll review those with Public Works because they'll primarily be managing, the drainage districts. Make sure everything they need is complete, making sure the assessments are accurate, which everything I've heard they are. We'll work with the DA's office. We'll get to that to the Board of Supervisors, and we'll have an effective date for the LMD. So we could, the easiest thing to do is to have it effective next fiscal year. So it would be go out with a June tax roll is the easiest paperwork-wise for like the treasurer's office and the assessors and everybody. So if we can time it like that, it's less, administrative impact for them. So that would probably be the goal if that works for the developer. If it doesn't and they need a half-year proration or something, we can work through that.
That works fine for us. We'll maintain on our, on our dime until it's accepted by the city and turned over.
Just a quick question. I know this development encompasses 2 parks. Do we have any timeline on when the parks might be started and completed?
Well,
We're going to have X number of homes built before we do the parks?
correct, and I don't remember the trigger point. I think it has to be designed at the 200th, something around, so the design has to come to you guys. I'm assuming it comes to Parks and Rec by the 200th C of O, and then the park actually has to be constructed, I think, with the 400th. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it is in the conditions of approval for the project. So there are trigger points that require the park to be built, designed and constructed.
Thank you. One of the, so the effective date, the duration of agreement, I just want to make sure I understand this. So it says the term of this agreement begins upon the board's approval and creation of the Lampa Ranch North LMD and terminates automatically 2 years after the last final project acceptance for development within the project. Can you explain how that works? Or, and I can show it to you. And I can ask you afterwards, it's just more of a clarification what that means.
Ben Johnson, Senior Deputy District Attorney for the record. So I'm not completely familiarized with the document. However, my understanding would be that the agreement itself would terminate after 2 years of the last final project acceptance by the city. So the agreement, as far as the contract, wouldn't be enforceable anymore if any of the terms, hadn't been met. Whereas the LMD will continue. So it doesn't have anything to do with termination or, ending of the LMD. It's just the agreement itself, if we were to enforce or, anything like that, the agreement itself.
So it's to make sure that the contract is followed.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. I appreciate that. Thank you. And sorry I didn't reach out earlier.
any more clarifications needed? So,
Not from the developer, but before and I just wanted to thank Rob and his staff and Open Space for that High Water Mark Festival and the preparation. The mural was gorgeous, and now it really ties into what you're talking about with the floodplains over there. So I really did appreciate everything they did, and I learned so much, and now I know what an noxious weed is. And so I just want to take that opportunity to thank you before you leave.
okay, so do I have anybody want to go with a motion? Commissioner Sheedy?
I move to recommend to the Parks and Recreation Director to proceed with creation of the Lampa Ranch North Landscape Maintenance District.
Do I have a second on that? Commissioner Kiever? Does anybody want to talk any more about that motion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? What about you up there on the screen? Did you say aye?
Did, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. So does anybody out there in the public want to comment on what we just did as far as the landscape maintenance agreement at the Lampa Ranch? Come on up, sir.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you, Commissioners, Chair. I do appreciate what you ask, and some of it mirrored some of my basic concerns and such. I did not quite get the consideration for the liabilities and such that I was hoping, but I think that I can get that from Mr. Johnson if he's available. And if I have problems, then we have another set of roles that this is still going through a process, and those concerns can be brought up then. Is that correct? And so,
Yes, that's correct.
all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do I?
You're perfectly fine. So with that, do I have, does anybody want to give me a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
Kiever and Wilkie, thank you. All right, so all in favor of adjourning this meeting? There we go. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Okay, so we're going to start the next meeting here in about 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening. I'm going to open the joint meeting of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. We're going to have 2 items to discuss this evening. We will take public comment now before we discuss the items. I would suggest if people have questions that you wait for the presentation. We will then take comments after each one of the items. So you'll actually have an opportunity to make comments after you've heard the presentations, as well as at the end of the meeting. You do have the right to make comments in a few minutes before we start the meeting if you would like to. But it might be more efficient and you might have a clearer understanding of what's really being proposed after the presentation. So let's start with roll call and determination of quorum.
From Open Space Advisory Committee, Chairperson Welch.
Present.
Vice Chair Kimbrough. Here. Member Inverson. Here. Member Martinovich.
Here.
Member Galeri.
Here.
Member Burge.
Here.
Member Curry.
Here.
A quorum is present. And from the Parks and Recreation Commission, Chairperson Case.
Present.
Vice Chair Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Schutte. Here. Commissioner Whitefield. Commissioner Caldwell.
Here.
Commissioner Wilkie McCulloch.
Here.
Commissioner Kiever.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, does the public have any comments on anything not on the agenda or anything on our agenda items? Not seeing some, I will go ahead and move to item
Chair.
5A.
We were going to make public comment
Oh, I'm
before we
sorry.
start.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But your staff, you're not public.
Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager for the record. I would just like to take the opportunity to introduce a new staff member to you all. I have with me today Samantha Essig. She's our new Senior Natural Resource Specialist. She just got started like 2 weeks ago, so fresh on the job. We're just getting her all up to speed. But I'd like to give her the opportunity to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Samantha Essig. I'm new to open space. I came from Nevada State Parks over at the Walker River State Recreation Area where we were kind of building a new state park. Very involved in noxious weeds. Know how to trying to manage for them. That's about it.
Welcome. We're looking forward to working with you. Thanks, Lindsay and Samantha. Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on to item 5A for discussion only. Discussion and review regarding the placement of ornamental painted rocks in Carson City parks, trails, and open space. So I guess, Greg, you're up.
I'm up. So thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Greg Bergeron, Trails Coordinator for Carson City. So a little bit of background on this item. Rock art has become an increasingly popular activity in the United States and several other countries since the founding of the Kindness Project in 2015. The activity involves people leaving small painted rocks with inspirational messages or artwork for others to find as a kind gesture with the intent of inspiring positivity. And online, there are chat groups and instructional videos dedicated to rock art. Generally, most of the groups have rules and guidelines about using non-toxic sealants and reminding artists to seek permission before leaving rocks. In many instances, rocks are placed on public property without permission, which has raised some controversy and debate on the suitability of the activity on public lands. Opponents often cite leave no trace principles or equate painted rocks to unwanted graffiti or litter. What do other park and rec systems do? So in my little bit of online research that I did, I found that the National Park Service, for example, they consider the activity to be illegal, where painted rocks are considered to be graffiti and are characterized as a disruption to a visitor's visual experience. The NPS has also indicated that painted rocks are a potential source of pollutants as the paint breaks down over time, leaving particles that may be harmful to the environment. And In my research, I found with regard to state park systems, the ones that I could find that had some information on their websites, most of them seem to either discourage or prohibit the activity. Now, for local and regional parks, they have a variety of ways that they're approaching it. Some outright prohibit the activity, and some have developed ways to embrace it. For example, Kennesaw, Georgia has a rock painting event, and the rocks are placed in a rock garden. In Grapevine, Texas, they have a rock art trail. In our own local experience has been that over the last few years that we have found ornamental painted rocks on a variety of our trails within Carson City with varying reactions from members of the public, and particularly on social media. In particular, most recently, the V&T multi-use pathway, which is the paved trail to the west of the college between Coombs Canyon and Ash Canyon Road, has been a popular location for painted rocks. And especially right up against the wall, there's a section of that trail where there's a wall that separates the residential area from the trail, and that's been very popular for placement of rocks. Our resident recently removed the rocks from the V&T pathway, initiating a number of reactions on social media and calls and inquiries to our department. There are some very deeply held convictions on both sides. And I want to be clear that our department has not taken a stance. We did not remove the rocks, and we did not authorize anyone to do so. The purpose tonight, this is not an action item. The purpose tonight is to obtain your feedback on potential policies and procedures to consider. And the discussion should include the suitability of this activity within Carson City parks and open space properties. And if suitable, where and how should it be managed? For example, should there be or could there be a community rock garden or a rock trail? And if we did that, what would be the rules and how would they be enforced? And what about First Amendment implications? And if it's not suitable, then what are the alternatives, like partnerships with other organizations or individuals on private property? And what should staff procedures be when we find ornamental decorated rocks in our parks and open space properties? Do we leave them? Do we remove them? Do we take them to a lost and found? We need some guidance and some suggestions. It's possible that it could come back as an agenda item later, but it's not. I mean, as an action item later. But right now, it's just for your discussion, and I will leave it up to you guys to give us some feedback.
Okay, Kurt, it's all right. We'll start with open space folks, and we'll come over to parks.
Sounds great, Alan.
Okay, so we'll start all the way down here. Casey, would you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for that great summary. I appreciate it. Also, the additional information about what communities, the ones in Georgia and Texas, have done to deal with this. I'm very concerned about the potential for ecological damage, and I respect the science that went behind that concern, although I don't know the science, but I would be concerned about that. I do know that the potential for plastics getting more and more into our environment is of great concern because those plastics get everywhere very fast. So I like the idea, though, of respecting the fact that this is an attempt to bring kindness to everybody and to bring beauty to the world in a human way by painting. And I really like the idea of embracing the initial incentive to bring joy to others, and then simply to perhaps the rock garden idea, the rock trail, a public event with a contest of it, perhaps putting some of the rocks in areas that are more accessible to people who cannot climb to the less accessible regions in the trails, so that everybody gets a chance to enjoy the beauty that people can create on rocks and the creativity. Those are my notes. That's it. Thank you.
I really like the idea of a rock art trail. I think it should be only in one space. I don't think it should be spread out. I think the city should have the ability to pick up any rocks that are not on a designated area, wherever it may be. And I like the idea of kindness, and I don't want to get into such nitpicking that if someone wants to place a nice little rock to make someone's day a little better, I hope the city, I know they have way more important things to do, but I like it being in one small spot. Thank you.
Thank you.
I attempted to run that area today. When I say attempted is because I don't run very fast. And I live around in that area, and I'd always enjoyed the rocks. And I really started thinking, is what do we want to do? What can we do to help with a win-win? And I look at that trail on the V&T trail, that's paved. That's already been impacted the natural terrain. There's the walls there, that's a paved section, and then there are houses on the other side. When you get past the wall section, there's the natural on the west side, and then there's the big detention basin on the east side and the community college. And then we get to Coombs Lane, and then it goes up into the V&T. And I really started thinking about this. What do I like to see as a native of Carson City? And I liked the rocks. I think that there's opportunity in those areas, or areas where there's sidewalks, such as Longview Park, Long Ranch Park, that's in there. There were rocks placed next to the street on the sidewalks. Again, that's not natural. That's streets, that's pathways of the community. So I also thought, and just as you said, okay, let's say we allow rocks, or rocks are put there. Well, some people could be, what happens if they become politicized or just inappropriate? And then I fall back on my past job and look at what can go in public right-of-way. And political signs cannot go into public right-of-way. Commercial advertising cannot go into public right-of-way, at least state-owned right-of-way. So I think that there could be some policy regarding that. As far as picking them up and removing them, as Mary said, and is that there isn't enough staff to but it could be self-monitoring in a way, of really making sure that the intent of helping bring something nice, and that is the intent, to what we're doing as we're going along our daily walks outside in the area. So I think I personally would support along the areas that have already been impacted, definitely not in any open space. Definitely not on the trails where they're dirt, climbing up to Kings Canyon, or even the V&T from Kuntz up through the dirt section of that trail. But on paved sections, I think that there's an opportunity to allow for the rocks. Thank you.
So I'm going to agree with pretty much everybody that's already gone ahead. I think these rocks have a place, but I don't think it's everywhere. When I'm out on these trails, and if it's a paved path and there's rocks on the trails that are painted, I have no issue with them, but I don't want to see them on the dirt trails moving up into the foothills or in the east side of town on really single track or double track type trails. But with that said, if we do designate certain areas, I just want to make the comment that the city puts in the rules that they have the right to pick up any rock at any point in time for any reason, that they shouldn't have to have a justification. If they seem that there's too many, there's political advertisements, there's anything, it doesn't matter, that the city would have the right to be able to pick up at any point in time.
I looked up the municipal code for open space. I'm going to fall back on that. And 13.06.010 for open space, which the V&T trail is open space. It is paved, but it is still open space. And everybody refers to that wall. That wall was not built by open space. That was built by the housing development that happens to be there. So this is open space. All of it is open space. And the purpose reads, Carson City through the preservation and protection of the quality of the natural environment, which has given Carson City much of its character. The natural environment includes spectacular views of the mountains, river, and Eagle Valley. So several times within this, it reads the natural environment. Painted rocks are not natural. So I am totally opposed to any painted rocks within any open space. I'm totally okay with finding a park to put painted rocks in, something like that, but I am totally opposed to any painted rocks with any open space, and it reads within our ordinance that we maintain natural environment, and painted rocks are not natural environment.
I did a little homework too and have some experience with art and trails, but one of the things that just came up, there's a National Trails Conference, probably the best that's done in the nation, that's coming to Reno next April. And one of their requests for presentations is arts on the trail. So it's all over the country. So they're actually asking for people to bring their communities work with art on trails. So, and I've worked with art on trails, but usually fundraisers where people, like at Spooner, they have a day where people come up and have art stations on the trail. And you have to give money and support someone like your Humane Society or somebody. So I've seen arts for events on trails. I saw that it's a national conference asking for whatever these other states and cities and communities are doing. And I have a state park background, so there's some sensitivity that Donna's talking about with the natural environment versus the hardscaped. So hardscaped, I'm not having the trouble with art as much as the natural, and that the national parks, graffiti, any painted rock is graffiti. That's because their mantra, their mission, their vision is the total protection of the environment, total. And cities have this responsibility to split that a little bit, that there's more people, so you have to govern more towards what people than you do the natural environment sometimes. So your hardscape is one of those solutions. So I don't have any trouble with art in hardscaped areas. And then I just drove down Highway 580 today, and there's a beautiful mural on the underpass there that somebody's doing. And to me, it's not only about these rocks, it's art, any art that we're talking about here. So I love seeing the mural on the wall there. It was beautiful. So I don't have any trouble with hardscaped areas with this type of an activity. It needs to be controlled. I know there's art groups out there that might help. I know the BAC might even have some people that might want to get involved with this because it's all about art. Or some leadership in the community that finds this as something that they'd like to work with. So when we talk about graffiti on rocks, I'll give you a little example here. When I was at Sand Harbor, the taggers came out and put 6-foot-tall blue painted rocks out at the end of Sand Harbor, one of the most beautiful beaches in the country. People went ballistic over that. Some guy drug his sandblaster up from Sacramento, drug it across the beach, and sandblasted that all off. And the next week they came back and spray painted it again. So we had to do it over again. So to me, that's graffiti on a rock. That's huge, not these little tiny rocks. I didn't see that interpretation, but I understand how that may come from other sources. So that's about, I guess, enough I could say. It's not only the rocks, and I think this is a great opportunity to bring arts to our trails. Oh, one other, where Jen used to work at Crystal Peak Park, there's a huge art thing, and it's called the Washoe Trail Art. So they have trail art in Washoe County, but you don't want this. It's like this 20-foot tall monolithic weird thing that was built out of, it was a neat art form because they used some historic stuff to make it, but it's not, it's a little beyond this one. So, I mean, Jen could maybe speak to Washoe County's art trails too. So, and then I'm going to shut up because everybody has something to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. You want to start here and go that way?
Do you have anything to say about it?
I'll comment after.
Okay, that
right.
sounds great. So, Leah, do you have anything to say? She's got a baby hand in her mouth. That was cute. I could go to you last.
I appreciate the rocks, and I was thinking I take this trail. I live over here on off Carmine, and I take the trail that starts on kind of off Lampa and spits you out over by Home Depot and Walmart. So it's a super developed area. It's right off the freeway, and that takes us over to the park over off James. That's our favorite park currently. But I would love to see some of these painted rocks there. Like I said, it's all a developed area. Hardscaped, I think I heard Mark call it. I think online it's called the freeway multi-use path. So, you know, it's not like freeways are not a natural occurrence. So I'd be all in favor of seeing those there. I'm not on the Open Space and Trails Commission, so I don't know if I have that kind of jurisdictional power, but I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, you two. Why don't we start down at the far end there?
I don't really have a very strong opinion here. It seems to me this is much ado about nothing. It started out, as I understand it, as a kindness thing to make people feel good during the pandemic and give them nice wishes. I think it's a fad. It's going to pass. I don't know that we have to get real excited about it or do anything, you know, big time federal kind of come on down. I think we should just let it be. Thank you.
I agree with so much of what so many people have said. I love an idea of a kindness project. I think the world definitely can use and benefit from kindness. And when people are reaching out, sharing beauty and thoughtfulness, that's always a good thing. Regarding the trail, you know, the V&T trail specifically, it is paved. So while it might be open space, it already has there's an impact. We have already impacted it by having a trail there. And I think along the wall, it's a joyful, lovely, makes sense kind of place for something like this. I am not for the painted rocks in dirt trails and in the wilderness for the reasons that have already been discussed. And as Mark said, you know, cities do balance. We're balancing community and a sense of community and being together and working together with natural environment. And so I think if we have areas that, you know, and I also agree here that my guess is the painted rocks will kind of run its course and then we will see less and less, kind of like during early part of COVID, folks were writing all the messages with the chalk and the chalk art, and we don't see that as often as well. So I am in support. I love the idea of embracing art within limited areas.
Thank you. I live just a couple of blocks from the portion of the V&T trail, and I've biked that not regularly, but frequently. And although that part of the trail may be designated as open space, I think you'd be hard pressed to actually identify it as such if you're on the trail. So maybe it needs to be re-identified or reallocated to some other designation. But I think the idea of hardscape, I don't see the harm that would occur in that particular area. And I think it's a very nice activity to promote the well-being of the community. So I'm in support of doing that any place that it makes sense in terms of hardscape. Thank you.
There we go. I have no feelings either way. Somebody wants to paint rocks, I think that's great. If they don't, that's great. I would suggest that if we go forward, we have a designated area, whether it be open space or a park, where these rocks would be displayed, if you will. I would also suggest, following up, that we do have some sort of prohibition against political advertising or advertising in general on the rocks, that they just contain feel-good messages of hope and joy and whatever. And that's basically maybe whatever park or trail we put it on, maybe it's not a real popular one, and we could use the rocks as a good PR project to get people to, yeah, promotional, yes. And that's Commissioner Wilkie's idea. I stole it from her.
Mine would just be the ecological damage that Casey was talking about, to be careful about that. And if we've already got asphalt there, I think that's makes it okay to put a rock there that's painted. There's never enough kindness, so that's a good thing. And then we have parks that we're taking out playground equipment, so that's more what I was talking about. That might be a good way to have rock gardens to get people to use the parks that don't have playground equipment anymore.
Do we have any of these rocks showing up in parks?
Yes.
So quite a few parks also. Okay. I know that I walk my dog along Washington Street, and the new portion of Washington Street right there. There's several of those rocks in that area too. So they're everywhere. So just kind of pointing that out. So I'm kind of a Boy Scout at heart and leave no trace. So I agree with those spaces that are out there for people to step onto the dirt, that there's no painted rocks on it. And ultimately, when I get on my mountain bike and go, the farther I get away, the less rocks there are. So that's how I look at it. And then as far as the hardscapes along the freeway, along the V&T up there where the wall is and all that, I kind of enjoy that. But when I turn to go up in the hills on my mountain bike, I don't necessarily enjoy that. So those are just my feelings from the heart. So thank you.
I really agree with the idea that if it's hardscape, that the placement of rocks should be something that we should allow. I would suggest that the department be given considerable leeway to indicate where rocks are appropriate and where they aren't. I'm not sure we need to go all the way to some sort of regulation, just more of a policy decision. I'm another one of the people that goes along the V&T wall fairly frequently, and I really like the rocks. I think they're a positive sort of thing, and I also agree with the idea that I suspect 3 years from now, there won't be many rocks around. And my only other final comment would be, I think if you did any sort of mass balance calculation on the amount of paint on little rocks versus the amount of paint that's put on, our streets, our buildings, and everything else, it's a minuscule thing. I just, if we're talking about on hardscape thing, and again, no on, dirt track, single track, double track, but on that, I think the amount of paint you would ever get out of, every rock in Carson City, we're talking about a couple gallons of paint. I mean, that's my guess anyway. So that's my 2 cents. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the public. So whoever would like to come up and ask questions or make comments, I'm sorry.
Mr. Schutte wanted to
I'm sorry.
Sorry, thank you for bringing up the paint, because I had that in my notes as well. Really, this, I think, is a great opportunity to talk about why some paints are okay and why other paints aren't. And what Casey was talking about, whether it's plastics or some of the components within paint, that there's definitely a way to do this that is more mindful of the environment and thoughtful of what we leave.
I missed this on my notes, and then I just reiterate that we're able to take anything off that's not appropriate. And we'll leave the professionals to judge what's appropriate or not, so.
Okay, unless somebody with open space or parks has another comment, I will open it to the public. Yes, whoever'd like to come up, please do so. Just state your name for the record if you would.
Hello, Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you very much. I had questions that didn't get answered during this last deal, and I appreciate everybody's information and everybody's input about their positions. I would love to have this type of format related to most every subject that went right down the line and everybody had a bit of a say in everything. I'd love to get to know you all better that way. The deal is where are these rocks going to go if they are pulled away from where they were because of whatever reason that the parks, would they go into the landfill? Where are they coming from? Where are those rocks coming from? Are they coming from your riverbeds? Are they coming from your landscaping? And that's a huge question for me. I'm very fortunate. I'm able to walk, and I try to walk wherever I need to go if it's within reason. And for safety purposes, I wear a vest. And honestly, if they're not going to look, they're not going to see my vest, but at least I will feel better while I'm laying in the hospital saying I tried, okay? But the other concern is the materials that these rocks are being painted in. They can't just be cleaned up and put back into the environment. So every rock has to be considered precious. And if that's going to go home and sit on somebody's coffee table, great, if it made them happy. But where did that rock come from? And what is being depleted by using it for that purpose? I love the art. I've just really enjoyed looking at what people have come up with. I just don't feel on hardscapes or on softscapes that type of art. I think in certain parks, for festivals, or for different activities that have been brought up, great. I appreciate the time, and I really am looking forward to the individuals that had started this knowing that they have had a chance to say their piece because they got cut short the other opportunities. But I'm totally against all of it for the reasons that I've brought up unless I can have better answers on that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Chris Lashley, and this will be short and quick. 3 ladies on the end. I can agree with you if you want to have a designated area to put the rocks. Robert and Donna, the last thing I want to see is if I'm doing a big climb going from Kings to Ash, Spooner, Kingsbury grade, when I get to the top to relax, to look and see a teal painted rock sitting next to me. And hopefully this painted color stuff just runs its trip and it's done with and goes away. That's it.
Thank you.
I'm Sheila Bridges, 58 years old, lived here all my life, 5th generation Nevadan. Is Sea Hill, is that graffiti? Because I believe that's open space. Is the sea, there's painted rocks there. Is that graffiti? We've got in the name of art, we have what looks like a decapitated head, in front of this building here. I don't know what kind of paint that's painted with, but, we want to talk about paint, and then the asphalt, and there's paint on houses. And I've heard about the potential impact on the environment with the paint on the rocks, but I have not seen any data. I've not seen any study that says, oh, we have determined that there is so much pollution coming from a painted rock that says, life is beautiful, have a nice day. I am in the Ridgefield area. I walk down the trail And did see painted rocks during COVID, never saw anything political. Everything was nice. Everything was very, very beautiful. When I see the rock, I think, oh, that's very nice. Never saw anything political. I'm sure they're out there, but I never saw anything political. They're gone now, unfortunately. But when when you guys decide to take the side of a mountain, behind Save Mart on the south end of town and put hundreds of apartment complexes, that's open space, right? Wasn't that open space before you decided to put, hundreds of apartment buildings? And, so I guess open space is sacred until it's not. It's sacred until we have to put up apartment buildings, and we're so worried about the paint. And, I'm walking my dog every day, and, every day I see a booze bottle every day. Every day I see, not every day, but frequently I see syringes. I see trash everywhere. I've been on these open space trails. There's always garbage, but, there's such a concern over a painted rock. And, does everything really need to be regulated? And we're so worried about the natural environment yet, but, like I said, let's just tear up the Lampa Ranch. Let's tear up, pretty soon there won't be any space, open space in this town, because it's like every single open space, there's a realty sign on it. And so, and then just like the dog park, where your dog can be off leash, we have to drive somewhere to see a painted rock now. This is a harmless, this is a solution to something that shouldn't even be a problem. There's no study about the amount of damage these rocks could cause. It's just a potential. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a timer. Okay.
Good evening. Is the mic on? Catherine Boyle, Carson City. Just like a bad petty, I'm back. Likewise, I did research on rock trails around the United States, and they're quite popular. And in some areas, yes, it is a fad. In other areas, they've been going on for absolutely years. All right, so who knows what's going to happen, right? I am very sensitive to having rocks up in the dirt trails. I do not agree with it. I totally agree with the policies currently by the federal and state laws on trails. All right. What I am thinking of is, or hoping for, is for you to create some kind of policy that defines both the area for the rock wall, I mean the cinder block wall, the asphalt, the painted asphalt. There's no beauty in that, put it that way. All right, but define your area. And when you make a policy, if you make a policy, define political. The reason I'm saying that is because I've painted American flag rocks. I've painted Nevada state laws rocks. All right, with little Carson City with a little star and everything. Is that considered political? So that's just something to think about should you create a policy. All right. The natural space, if you will, has already been damaged by the cinder block wall, the asphalt, and the paint that divides both sides of the asphalt for the multipurpose trail. All right. So that might be an ideal environment since it's already been damaged. All right, it's already been abused, if you will. Let's see. So I would limit it to just that cinder block wall, even though the pathway goes, asphalt goes all the way to the college, behind the college. I wouldn't even approve either side of that pathway because either side of the pathway is dirt. All right, we're talking a cinder block wall, maybe a third of a mile. 5, 6. Okay, about art in our environment. You have all the metal figurines. I don't know what they're called, but I love them along Highway 80 as you're leaving town. Highway 50, you see the cowboy. I love all of that kind of art. All along the freeways going down the new byway. this brings, lightness to our hearts, just like a rock wall does when somebody's taking a stroll. And as far as much to do about nothing, it's only much to do about nothing if you haven't spent literally hours upon hours upon hours painting these suckers, all right, to have them thrown away by one person. All right. And maybe it will be a fad. We don't know. But a lot of people participated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Ryan Espinoza. Again, people will self-police on this. Someone's already picked them up and gotten rid of them. What's political to one is not political to another. You guys start putting these rules on saying that you can't have this, you're violating someone's First Amendment rights. Political signs, yes. If someone paints a rock that's political for them, that's art to them. May not be art to you, but it is to them. Obviously, people have cleaned up rocks where they don't want them there. Leave it be. It'll self-police on its own. And if we do put more rules in, who's going to clean up these rocks? Who's going to enforce where they're at? We've got 2 park rangers covering how much property? I've said this before. We don't need more rules. People take care of things themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Perry Carlson, and my wife and I are longtime Carson City residents. My wife was born here, and I want to thank the commission for serving the citizens of Carson and trying to make it a better place to live. I also served the city of Carson for 33 years on the fire department. Some of you are familiar faces. I don't speak well in front of the public, and I wasn't going to speak about the open rock issue. But my wife and I, this will tie in with the dog issue, which will speak later, but I'll keep it short here. For the last 15 years, my wife and I have had a tradition on S Hill. We pick out a pinyon pine up there, and we decorate it with the Nevada state colors and garland the day after Thanksgiving. After the 12 days of Christmas, we take it down and we police the area. We have gotten so many comments, positive, all positive, from the fellow hikers on that trail on what we do. Not a negative one. I also, on bad days, have come across some rock art up there where I'm in a crappy mood, and that has changed my outlook for the rest of the day. So just, unless it's an issue, leave it alone. And that's all I've got to say on the rock issue.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this issue? Okay, Jen, do you want any more comments on that, or do you think you've gotten what you needed at this point?
Thank you, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just really appreciate everyone being open and considerate and being willing to share their opinions on it. I get the passion on both sides of it, and I really don't have a strong opinion either way. I can really appreciate everybody wanting to come forward and share these positive messages and have something, fun and constructive to do, especially with kids, and being able to provide it in a way that, we don't appear like we're trying to impact the environment. So I really get both sides of it. I think we'd really like your opinion if the city should create a policy or not. We don't have one right now. So, and it wasn't the city that collected those rocks and removed them from the V&T trail. So if people didn't get that at the beginning presentation from our trails coordinator, I just want to make that really clear on the record that the city did not remove those. So it was a private citizen that did that. So if we want to allow certain areas, we can't really censor. There's certain, First Amendment protections for people that are in places or in place for a reason. I don't want to get in the middle of all that, definitely. So if you feel strongly or not about us creating a policy, staff would be happy to go work on one, and we can bring that back to you for consideration if you would like.
Comments? Open space? Yes, Mark.
Green, there we go. So Jen, I would love a policy. I think it's important, and I know it's all new, and hopefully through research, you can find something that some other communities used as a template, so you don't reinvent the wheel. But I think there was enough discussion about the comfortability with, I'm not saying what the policy is going to end up, but hardscape versus natural world and those places that are appropriate, and then maybe there's even, like I said, maybe the art community might come into play here. I think the city even has an art person, I thought, that they hired at one point.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We're in the process of hiring an arts and culture supervisor for the department, and they'll work with the Culture and Tourism Authority on the cultural master plan and other public art opportunities. So
That'd be
perhaps
perfect.
if there's going to be a policy, this could be one of their first tasks
One of
to
the,
do.
yeah, right on their list as soon as they come in the door. So I think it's important. I think it's an integral part of this community, and you've seen both sides. And so, yes, please.
Susan?
I agree with Mark, just something, it doesn't have to be big or complicated, but maybe something simple, so in case this comes up again and again, that we can have something to refer to. I would like to give credit where credit is due. A lot of conversation was talked about along the freeway and the aesthetics and landscaping within the freeway. Mary Fisher, when Carson City Freeway was first started to be contemplated, Mary Fisher came to NDOT and said, you know, it's going to be impactful, and it pushed NDOT into creating an aesthetic and a landscaping committee and policies on what to put and working with the communities. And it's been exciting to see it grow. And without her push, a lot of the efforts and a lot of the architecture and the features that are under construction or that have been constructed wouldn't have been done. So she's like the mother of freeway improvement aesthetics. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Casey?
Yeah, I really think that it's kismet that we're about to hire somebody focusing on arts. It's perfect. And I would like the approach to whatever policy to be a permissive policy. So let's do as much as possible to guide the permission for doing this in a way that contributes to art and contributes to quality of life without detracting or harming.
Parks, folks?
Stacy?
I wouldn't want a lot of time spent on this policy just because, and I don't know, and that would be my one question is how much time it would take to do a policy, because I think there's a lot of things that we have on our plate right now as a department that I think take precedence, and I would hope that we keep this in a priority status to where if we have time, we can do it kind of thing. And then just like to thank Greg, you stayed through the last meeting and then we tabled this. So we do appreciate your time, and because that was a long meeting and then to come back. So we appreciate your presentation and time.
Okay, yeah, and I agree. If we can make it more of a carrot effort rather than a stick, that would certainly be desirable. I mean, certainly open space does that a lot with our rangers in terms of how we interact with the public. And I think it's been quite successful. And so I appreciate that. Seeing no other comments, I guess we will move on to 5B for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors or staff regarding the open space and trail components of the draft dog rules and regulations policy. So why don't we start with Parks folks, since we did open space on the first. Yeah, do the report first, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. So this item is a continuation of long-term discussing dog use policies within parks and open space. Specifically, it's a continuation from the last meeting that we had in July. We didn't have an opportunity to get to the open space and trails components of the policy. We did discuss parks, special use facilities, buildings, and trailheads, and those components of the policy were approved with some modifications. So we won't be discussing any of those components of the policy tonight, just focusing on trails and open space. So specifically related to the policy and what we have proposed, we don't have a whole lot proposed that's different than what's already happening in trails and open space. Right now, dog use is allowed off-leash on all of our trails and open space, except for a few exceptions. Those exceptions, as of right now, are the Buzzy's Ranch Trail. We made that dogs on leash. And then we had kind of some internal policies as far as where they were prohibited, but we're looking to cement those. So within the policy, the items that are prohibited or different from just full off-leash use is the Red House at Silver Saddle Ranch. That's specifically the Red House building, not the Red House complex or the yard, just the building there. The public doesn't currently have access to that space, so kind of a moot point, but we wanted to cement that. As well as the pastures at Silver Saddle Ranch. We don't allow dogs in those pastures because it is an active working ranch and they use it for hay and other things. Same with the pastures at Buzzy's Ranch. We don't currently allow dogs out there, but that's not cemented in policy anywhere, so we wanted to codify that. And then as far as what else is proposed in the policy, Fullstone Wetlands and Washoe Wetlands would both be dogs on leash to protect the habitat there. And then I already mentioned the Buzzy's Ranch Trail is on leash, as well as the Foothill Trail. The first 500 feet of that trail are dogs on leash, and that's per Carson Tahoe Hospital. So, within the policy, there's also some provisions that we've proposed that would allow the director to set forth temporary closures or seasonal closures or seasonal leash laws as needed to protect nesting habitat as well. Currently, we do surveys along the Buzzy's Ranch Trail. We started doing those because of actually a request from the committee when we were developing that trail. So we are looking at expanding that bird monitoring program into other parts of the river corridor so that we can really understand the bird habitat out there and any potential impacts that could be happening from recreational use and being able to adjust with some policies that we have proposed. So I wanted to point that out for discussion. And then some other discussion considerations that we've come up with. Right now we're proposing that all trails basically be dogs off leash unless otherwise noted. But of course, we have a whole suite of different kinds of trails within Carson. We have single track trails and we have multi-use paved trails that are more urban and more in the middle of town. And that's been a discussion point. Are those appropriate for having dogs off leash if they're directly adjacent to Highway 50, for example? So that was another item we wanted to get your feedback on. So with that, I would take any questions.
Okay, we can start with parks, if you like.
Well, I know that we aren't talking about what we talked about last meeting, but I think it is relevant in terms of there is a real effort to be mindful of dogs and people who love dogs and the importance of dogs in the community and to families and all, and to make this as user-friendly as possible and as inclusive while still being respectful of some of the other concerns, wildlife, watershed, that kind of thing. And so my hope is that the report and what Lindsay just said eases some of the concerns that folks have had in thinking that all the trails are now off limits. That's not it at all. In fact, the trails, it's only a few for some really good reasons. And so I just wanted to reiterate that this is a dog-friendly community, and we're really trying to just be respectful of everyone within the community, as well as the safety of dogs. So thank you for bringing up the trails near highways or the paved areas because, yeah, that is concerning. Yeah, my hope is if people would, if their dog was even remotely at risk for not following rules and running amok, that they would be on leash. But it's still worrisome. Thanks.
I think it would be useful to define a trailhead. Not every trail has a sign that says this is the trailhead, and when you leave this area, it's okay to take your dog off leash. I know we talked about it once. It was like 100 feet or something, but it's not on here.
Commissioner Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director.
Oh,
We
yeah.
do have trailhead defined in the policy, and then we also have a map and a
Yes.
list that designates what those trailheads are.
Okay, so if somebody wants to go through all this, they'll find out.
Yep.
Okay.
So
And
we
so
did
I-
define those areas, and then if there's ones where you don't think, oh, that's not really, doesn't meet the definition, let us know. We can clarify that for you.
Okay. Okay, will signs be posted that people will know when they've left the trailhead and they're on the trail?
We'd like to pursue that, so if the policy does go forward to the Board of Supervisors, obviously nothing's final until they approve it.
Right.
Then we would work on a sign plan, so that uniformly people would know, where they need to go and where they can have their dogs safely
Okay.
off leash.
Okay, that'll be very helpful. Thank you.
Kurt Meyer, avid outdoor, I hike and walk with my dog and ride my mountain bike with my dog and all those things. I definitely understand the concern about the trailhead and so forth. And I'm definitely love when my dog is off leash and we're rolling through the hills. So I think that's a wonderful part of Carson City. So thank you.
Okay. Casey, we can start down at your end if you'd like.
The only thing I wanted to say was the same that was down the other end, and that is to define trailhead and make it simple to define and signage for it, and just make the super simple signage so it doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's very clear that here there be open trail or something, and make it easy for people to say, after this point, away from where I access the trail, I can have my dog off lead.
Right.
And that is a really good thing for people who keep their dogs on lead like I do, because my little guy is so small, and some of the dogs that are off lead are a lot bigger. So that way I know to be particularly aware of, now there's going to be dogs off lead, so I'm going to keep an open eye open for dogs off lead and make sure that, there's no conflict, so.
In regards to a multi-use path, like the paved ones that run along ditches and things, I wonder if we could have, again, a simple, not that expensive sign that has a circle with a slash with a dog chasing a duck, because I know I'm just as guilty. I have my 2 dogs and they're like my kids, and I've caught myself like, oh, water, they're golden retrievers. And then you let them off, and then it's like, oh, I've got to call them back, put them on leash, because that's not where they should be off leash. And it's not just about my dogs. There are other animals to consider. So along those paved paths that run along ditches, there might be a sign that says, hey, remember, think. It's not just about you and our lovely children. Hey, thank you.
I support the changes and that Lindsay mentioned and all of the impacts. I really do like, and these were probably in here, but really emphasize the guiding principles where the department, you're protecting health, safety, environmental, historic, you have your reasons for doing things, and we want that ability to maintain. So I think that this is a good, reasonable policy that allows for dogs and allows for community. And then if it doesn't, there's valid reasons to support that. Thank you.
I would like to say thank you for all the work the staff has put into this. This This is not something that has been come up in the last just 2 meetings. It's been multiple years. So thank you for everything you have done, and we've made a lot of progress in just the 1 year I've been involved with this. I do like the changes that you guys have done. The one comment I would like to add to it is we had a public comment turned in that talked about wildlife and protection of wildlife, and I strongly agree with that. There's going to be times, not just along Carson River, but as well as west side of Carson, where there is wildlife interactions, or when does and fawns, brand new baby fawns, we see them on the west side of Carson, they're spotted in only, 15 pounds, if that. There is times that I think that we may want to just try to encourage the public to keep animals on leash during that time, or even in the Carson River area, maybe take a few of these extra trails and turn them on leash around the Buzzy Ranch Trail, just to try to help protect the wildlife in that area, because it's very important for the birds and nesting in that region.
Yeah, I agree with what Robert said. Under responsibility of dog owners, I'd like to see added that they're responsible for making sure that their dogs do not harass wildlife. And I agree, that the director is capable of closing trails at certain times or putting dogs on leash for certain periods and seasonally, and maybe the whole river corridor needs to be closed on both sides of the river during nesting. That's a big issue, and we are a flyway corridor for nesting birds. And that's really important that we protect these birds that are nesting, and we have bald eagles down there and golden eagles, and of course geese are not exactly in short demand, but we do have blue herons and cormorants and things like that, and we do need to protect these birds. Those were a couple of my statements. Let's see, what else did I have? The maps that you have, I really strongly request that as soon as this policy is passed, that these maps, they're beautiful, but they really need to be interactive so that it's clear where the, a little easier to go to. And I think that was it. Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, there we go. Well, you heard me last time. I'm a strong defender of that Carson River corridor for any number of reasons. That any classroom from UNR that would come into the study, and they used to come down to the Carson River as one of their classes because there's so many species on the river down there. And how many times have you seen the fledglings kicked out of the nest too early, and they're on the ground and the mom's tending to them? So it's it's free gratis for dogs. And I used to have dogs legal at San Harbor many years ago, and we try to enforce that. And if you have a golden retriever or a Labrador, if you're 150 pounds, your dog's going to drag you to the water. They're magnet for them, so they just love water, and that's part of their nature. So I just have a real hope, and I can lobby enough to, with Dan actually wrote a big long letter too, to support some closures in the Carson River to protect that corridor that is so valuable, and we've spent so much time and money establishing that as a public place. And you can enjoy it much more if you're down there with your children, your grandchildren, than after dogs chased everything off before you get there. And I'm not anti-dog, but I think that's just not the appropriate place to have a free run of your dog in the river corridor. And I will lobby for that as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this juncture, I think, what? Oh, sure.
Yeah, I didn't ask you if you wanted to comment on this. I'm sorry. I'm looking right at you, but I forgot you. I apologize. Do you have any comments you'd like to make?
That's okay. I don't. Charlotte is very pro dog. She would like me to let you know.
All right. Thank you very much. Go
Thanks.
Oh, that's good. Okay, at this point, I would open it to the public. So whoever'd like to make some comments, please come up.
Carson City, Nevada, in Denny French. Just changed it up a bit because my mind went nuts. Anyhow, my main thing is I really appreciate Commissioner on open. I'm sorry, on open space consideration of the river area. Very concerned about those birds as far as their nesting, and there are butterfly species that are also in movement now, and those type of critters. I just wanted to say I appreciate all your comments, but I tend to gravitate towards really want to encourage some places need to be closed for certain reasons. In Carson City, you know, we don't always have when tree trimming is done, considering the bird nesting, different things. And where I'm from California, and I know that's a bad word to bring up at a meeting like this, but we're very concerned about the nesting. We're also concerned about situations in Ojai, California, where I was from, tree trimming. You watched out where you had people, you watched out when you had activities, and those things are considered. And I think it would be good on this map to maybe be proactive so that if you look at an area, you can touch on it and say, okay, this area during this time of the year is closed, or this is open, and this is, I really thought that was a great suggestion. Thank you very much, Miss Inversion. I'm sorry, Donna. Is that okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Chris. I'm from Carson City. I lived here all my life. I'm going to comment kind of on the parks and trailheads, even though I know that's already been kind of set in stone. But then I'll go on to discuss the trails. My wife and I we constantly recreate with our dogs. So we hike, dogs typically off a leash. So this whole issue is kind of agitating to me. To be honest, I see it as an infringement on my individual freedom. I know a lot of this stuff gets voted on, but I don't think individual freedoms can be voted just away based on the majority. I think there's examples of that, so we can look at religious freedom. We don't say, hey, what's the religion of the majority, and then we vote away the religious freedoms of the minority. We don't do that with free speech. If my opinion is not popular, I still have a right to my opinion. We don't just vote it away on the majority. So, I mean, my big question with all of this is what is this in response to? And all I've seen from previous meetings, we watched the recordings, is there was dog incidents and we don't have a policy, but nobody seemed to bother to really describe what those incidents were. It was like, hey, at Mills Park, there was 100 and some odd incidents, but they didn't go on to actually describe what the problem was. I work in law enforcement. I know animal control would obviously be involved if there was major incidents, and I know the response from animal control is really there hasn't been any identified problem. I do understand that, we are dog people. Not everybody has to be dog people. I do understand that dogs are not going to go everywhere, anytime. I don't believe that's appropriate either. But when we're looking at these on-leash versus off-leash laws, I don't really understand it. Like parks, why would somebody not have the right to have their dog off leash? People should have the right to choose whether or not they have their dog off leash, on leash, whether they want to have a dog, not have a dog, bring their dog with them, etc. I really would want to hit hard on the what's the identified problem. And I think it's well, we're just setting policy and we didn't identify the problem. I know I'm running low on time, so I'll kind of skip ahead to this trailhead. I know I'm actually in an agreement with most of the policies but that have been set forth, but I'm kind of fearful that that's going to be expanded to certain trailheads. And I know it got mentioned that, well, there's baby deer and there's bald eagles, but again, what's the identified problem? How many bald eagles were eaten by these vicious dogs, or how many deers got hurt by dogs? It doesn't exist. We're setting policies for a problem that does not exist. I don't understand it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Laura. Can you hear me? Okay. Laura Gentine. Please forgive me for reading from the paper and not making too much eye contact. This is very personal to me. So I've lived here for 18 years. I've always had dogs. I walk them every single day off leash. A few of you know me, and now you know that's my whole world. I use these trails every day. So this is a perspective of somebody who's out there on the ground every single day with my dogs off leash. Either I'm really lucky or my perspective is really skewed, but I've always encountered very respectful people on our trails. In my 18 years, I've had 0 even semi-serious altercations with other dogs, whether they're on or off leash. And my dogs have never eaten birds. They don't eat deer. People tend to be really respectful. And if you see a dog on leash, you know you respect the leash. You pull aside, that dog's on leash for a reason. And those are the people that I've always encountered. And like I said, I'm out there at least 360 days a year. People love their dogs. They don't want to see them hurt, but we really don't need to be micromanaged either. People are very responsible with they love their dogs. For a lot of us, we don't have kids. We can't have kids. Those are our kids. And I know people don't like that saying, but it's how some of us feel, so we have to respect it. In response to the last meeting, I heard you talk a lot about the impact that dogs have on the environment, the trails, wildlife, but we can't forget that humans have the greatest impact of all on all of those things. We need to take into consideration, like when you're doing the survey of the impact on the wildlife, let's take into consideration the construction we're doing in our community. It's just blown up in the last couple years. So let's take that into consideration too. It's not just the dogs. You guys used the word dangerous a lot in the last meeting. I heard it a lot. I just hope that you don't assume that every dog is dangerous and every situation involving dogs is dangerous. Please give us the courtesy that we work really hard to raise really good dogs every single day. I work every day to have dogs that can be out in the community and are decent members of our community. And they give back too. I have therapy dogs, so they don't, not all dogs eat small children, and not all dogs maul wildlife. Let's keep that in mind. Our locals have been enjoying the trail system for many years. It's a privilege that we don't want to lose, and we work really hard to not lose that privilege. I know I'm running out of time, so I just want to end with, as an educator, it's been my tradition to walk my dogs on the Riverview Loop every single night before the first day of school, and I would be devastated to lose that. It is what grounds me before school starts. It's my therapy, it's my everything. When I'm having a hard day, I know that at the end of the day, I can take my dogs for a walk. It's literally what I think about every single day when I'm at work. So when you're making these policies, please just think about what brings you the most joy in your life and think about having somebody take that away from you. And that's how the people in our dog community feel. So please just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. This is what I submitted to the board in an email, and I'm going to read it real quickly. Is it on now? I'm Dan Greatak, citizen of Carson City. Open space properties along the Carson River were originally acquired to protect the riparian corridor. We all recognize the importance of preserving the historical qualities associated with the Cottonwood Gallery Forest. These properties should protect a fragile environment above all other uses. In order to maintain the wildlife corridor along the Carson River, managing access is necessary. I believe dogs should be on leash throughout open space areas directly adjacent to the river and the associated floodplain areas. To best accomplish this, yet allow for some off-leash opportunity, I propose the following. Dogs on leash and on the trail at the following locations: Carson River Park West Side, Buzzy's Ranch Trail, Empire Ranch Trail, Morgan Mill to Vidler Open Space, Empire Ranch Riverview Park Corridor, Mexican Ditch Trail South, River Trail, Silver Saddle Ranch Trail adjacent to the river corridor, Golden Eagle Open Space, Mexican Dam Open Space, Morgan Mill Preserve and Open Space, Old Buzzy's Ranch, and Vidler's Open Space. Riverview Park is a special case where unrestrained access has historically been allowed. On leash would be the preferable regulation
Partly because of seasonal closure of the wetland areas is a management challenge, but as a park site, not open space, allowing dogs under direct control might be an acceptable concession. There are several areas that have restricted access that should be maintained. The Silver Saddle Ranch is a fenced area south of the fishing pier in Carson River Park. And also the area adjacent to the new Buzzy's Ranch Trail is currently designated dogs on leash and stay on trail. Dogs off leash, if open spaces are going to allow dogs off leash, I would propose Ambrose Trails, Carson River Canyon Road, Carson Aquatic Trail, Mexican Ditch Trail North, and Silver Saddle Ranch Trails on the east side of the river. These suggested regulations would allow for public and their pets to recreate on the most popular river trails while reducing the impacts of off-leash dogs in the wildlife corridor. This limits free-running dogs to only one side of the river in some of the most sensitive habitats. Maintaining this limited wildlife feeding, nesting, and migration river corridor as free of interference as possible will help ensure protection of the precious resources of the steward. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Espinoza. I'm commenting on this. Why do we keep trying to reinvent the wheel? NRS 503631. Dogs running at large, unlawful to permit tracking, harassing, or killing of big game mammal. It's already a state law. Let's see. This, and then there's NRS 503.005. It is unlawful to harass any game mammals or game birds by any means. It's already law. We don't need more policies to micromanage adults. Why keep reinventing the wheel? Leave things alone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm John Barrett, here tonight to testify against the draft dog leash ordinance. This proposal is well-intentioned, perhaps, but too broad and too restrictive. You're attempting to find a solution to a mostly imagined problem, although I will make a nod to the people who want to protect wildlife. Nor will anything be improved by some of the language in this draft. People are adults, as the gentleman just said, and should be treated as such in a state like this, where adults have been treated that way, until they prove otherwise, and their dogs and they are natural. It's one of the oldest natural bonds on this planet. It goes back to prehistory. At any rate, I'll go on from that because I'm just repeating some other stuff, and I will go to my specific issues, although there are some plaudits in here for the draft. On page 2, and this is my big one, under the heading Voice Command, Voice Control, is the following untethered, and I use that word purposefully, sentence. If a dog approaches or remains within 10 feet of any other person other than the owner or keeper, that dog is not under voice command or control and shall be deemed, quote, at large, unless such person, or in the case of a minor child, an adult present with the child, has communicated to the owner or keeper by spoken word or gesture that such person consents to the presence of the dog. Are you kidding me? This is going to be the law in this town? This just sets up a situation where people who don't like dogs and people who have dogs will be at each other's throats on occasion, which we don't have that often here, as has already been testified. Under the heading Responsibility of Dog Owners, please add responsibility of dog and horse owners. I made this point a year ago at this very same type of meeting. The horses need to have their waste picked up as well. I thank you for excluding Long Ranch and Mayor's Park from the leash law, but urge you to add Blackwell Pond Park to the list where dogs may be off leash. I have no problem with the leash at trailheads provision, and I'm glad you intend to allow dogs off-leash in most cases on the various trails. I see that as wise policy, with the exceptions you have all noted here tonight. I know the work of your unit takes time, effort, and you get nothing but satisfaction of keeping your city's problems at bay. This is a solution looking for a problem. In my view, this is going, if enacted as written, to make Carson City a less friendly place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Sheila Bridges, native of Carson City and Nevada, 5th generation, and I will keep saying that. You all can be tired of hearing about it, but I feel strongly there's a reason, and you guys, I'm sure, can all figure out the reason. Definition of wildlife: any animal found naturally in the wild state, whether indigenous to the state of Nevada or not, whether raised in captivity or not. Every time you guys approve a huge housing complex, how many animals are killed with the digging up of the Lampa Ranch? That's wildlife. We got field mice, rabbits, squirrels, and skunks. Does anybody care about the skunks? Everybody talks about, not everybody, you'll hear, oh, the animals were here first. We need to accommodate the animals. They were here first. I agree with Ms. Gentine, people are the biggest polluters, but, we also are responsible for maintaining, because otherwise we should just all commit suicide and let the animals, take over, and, to protect the wildlife. I remember when Carson River, there was nothing out there, nothing. In the 70s, when I was growing up, there was nothing out there. Nobody cared about the Carson River until people came along, developed a bunch of houses, and decided to make it this natural habitat. Sometimes high schoolers would go out there and throw keg parties. That was about the extent of how people cared. And then there was hunting out there, but there wasn't a lot of concern in the 70s about the Carson River. I've never seen, give us the data. If you're going to say incidents, we need maybe a little bit more specific. What are the problems? What does an incident mean? Is it somebody calling up saying, there's a dog here, I don't like it? And who will enforce this? And here's my prediction. You make more rules, you make more policies, you want to have a policy about decorated rocks. Well, if you're not going to have enough staff to police it, less people are going to pick up after their dogs, because they're going to be mad and they're going to be resentful and they're going to be like, you know what? I can't have my dog off leash, so I'm not even going to pick up after my dog. Why should I? Because the people have all their concerns about the birds at the river, but they don't care about me, the taxpayer. They don't care about me with my pets, and that, I can have my dog off leash at this beautiful, pristine Carson River that, a few decades ago, nobody cared about the Carson River. Thank you very much.
Are we on? Yeah. And maybe last, I hope but not least, like I said, I've been in the Carson community
Excuse
for
me,
probably.
just for the
Oh, I'm
record,
sorry,
your name?
Perry
Just for,
Carlson. Perry Carlson, hi. Like the first lady that spoke, my wife and I walk our dogs. They're yellow labs. In the 80s and 90s, they were Carson City celebrities. They made the newspaper numerous times in the newspaper. And I had to end up buying ice cream for the fire department many times because of that. But anyway, we walk our dogs every day, rain or shine, whether it's 15 below, whether it's raining sideways, every day without fail, unless we have a doctor's appointment. We're either up on S Hill during the winter because of lack of rattlesnakes, or Carson River Road because it's access to water. I don't know how long the Carson River open space is. I'm sure it's several miles. But there's maybe a quarter or an eighth of a mile stretch down there at Carson River Road where dog owners, lab owners, golden retriever owners make a beeline to, because during the hot summer months that their dogs swim, fetch, play ball, and socialize with other dogs there. Now, if the Parks and Recs wants to build a suitable pond or swimming area at Fuji Park, all game for it, close the park, or close, that stretch of water. But I think keeping that short corridor open would be an option. Close the rest of the corridors down, for wildlife. I see a few bald eagles now and then there. They're up in the trees. And if you want to close it during a nesting period during the springtime or late fall, okay, but not on a permanent basis. Like I say, it's one of the few wet areas where dog owners can enjoy, and the dogs can enjoy getting out of the summer heat and swimming. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robin Orloff. I'd like to say I support the open space dog policy as I see that staff developed. I'm a runner, hiker, mountain biker, and when I look at this list, I see most of the open spaces are open for off-leash, if I'm reading it correctly. I appreciate that. I think the areas that are restricted and prohibited to me make sense based on studies that open space staff have done, Buzzy's Ranch, and the area of the river along that. So, and I also am supportive of staff being able to close or restrict along the way as they see possible. I think that was part of what was proposed as well. So I'm thrilled. The open space, the OHV area is also open space and dogs can run free there. And I think the OHVers appreciate that. I see the dogs running around when people are crawling and wheeling. Can't say that I'd run my dog out when I'm on my dirt bike. I think that'd be a little bit too hard for him to keep up. So, and I also want to thank you all. I think that the last meeting, you listened to public comment and you made some changes based on public comment, keeping some of the parks off leash rather than everything on leash. So I think there's a compromise going on, and I just wanted to support what I see proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public care to comment? Okay. The staff want to add anything at this point?
Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. For the record, just a few items I wanted to clarify or bring up just based on some of the discussion. So this wasn't brought up in this meeting, it was brought up in the last meeting, so I wanted to reiterate part of the impetus for developing this whole policy. One was to create consistency throughout the department, have clear policies and procedures for the public and for our staff, but there's also a current Carson City Municipal Code that's on the books that says that dogs are prohibited everywhere in the entire park system, which includes open space, trails, and parks. So part of developing this policy is to clean up that municipal code because obviously that's not being adhered to in lots of locations. So just to clear that up for some of the folks, that was one of the reasons that we're going down the road of putting this policy together. Few other items that came up, the don't harass wildlife component that can be added under responsibility of dog owners. I think that's a great addition. We've identified an area of the policy where that could be added. And then just one other item, some comments came up around Riverview Park. We're not proposing any changes or restrictions to dogs at Riverview Park, so it would remain dogs off leash as it is now. So just wanted to clarify a few points.
Okay, any more comments from open space? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. In addition, we do need to revise the definition for voice command and control. And I think the recommendation would be just to use the city municipal code as the definition so we can get rid of that 10 feet confusion.
Okay, open space, folks. Any more additional comments, questions? Yes, Mark.
You got to go back to school and push button class. So there was some comments made about there's been no history shown for justification for some of these changes. And is the survey still on the internet, Lindsay? Because there's a huge amount of information and justification with a lot of statistics showing conflict and problems throughout the dog world. So, and that was all addressed about 5 meetings ago, I guess. Is it still on the website so the public can go and see some of the action that was, and this survey was 668 people, which is huge for a small community.
So the survey itself isn't up on the website anymore, but the survey content and survey summarized results are all available as part of past meeting minutes and materials. So all of that's still available for anyone to see.
Well, good. And that, for the people who had mentioned that, I mean, that research might be enlightening, actually. It's about all the conflict that was discussed from people that have been using trails for years. And I'm not a spokesperson for either side. I'm just telling the information's there.
When the meetings come out, the attachments for the agenda do not come with the meeting minutes. So like survey results would not be with those minutes. So you can't see them. Because I've looked back at minutes to look for something like that and I don't find them.
They're not, I guess, sorry for the confusion. They're not attached to the minutes specifically, but they're available as the supporting materials that are attached to that agenda, which is all archived after the fact.
You can find them, because I was trying to look for them and I couldn't find them, so.
Yeah, you have to, typically you search for the meeting and the date, or you just start clicking different meeting dates if you don't know which one, and it'll pull up the agenda and then the materials are attached.
Thank you. Okay, Parks and Rec, any additional comments, questions, concerns?
Dave Whitefield. I'd just like to thank the staff for the hard work. I think based on the public comment from the last meeting, I think you've done a good job of incorporating a lot of those concerns and addressing those concerns. And I appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I have one.
Yes.
Just real quick. Blackwell's, just because I spent the last 6 months there almost every other day, with them being now put on a leash, are we going to have more signage allowing dog owners to know that? Because I think that's going to be a big reality check in that subdivision.
Thank you, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So this is not final until the Board of Supervisors approves it. Once the board approves whatever reiteration of this, hopefully they take your recommendations and go with that. But we would work on a plan to implement signage at all these locations. And we do a really robust public outreach effort, telling people where they can go, not just where they can't. I mean, obviously this policy, if it's implemented, will allow dogs in more places than they're actually allowed right now. Not just related to the code, but there are certain parks where we don't even allow dogs at all. And dogs would be allowed at all of those, obviously on leash in certain areas, but at least allowing that opportunity. So we would really work on signage so we can educate people so they can make an informed decision. Do I want my child to play in that park? If I don't like dogs, should I even be here? If I do love dogs and want my dog to run off leash, is this the right location for that? So we would really work on an outreach effort and signage.
And that was the neat thing about that high water flood thing too, because they have that interactive map. So if you could put some of that technology with the QR codes, that was really fascinating. I think if we have that where it can take them interactively, like we were talking about, I think that would be great.
Lindsay and I were just having a little sidebar conversation about creating the trails page, for example, having an interactive map, and then you could click on the trail. Maybe it would say, you know, be aware of seasonal closures during nesting season or whatever education opportunity we would need to have, and having that incorporated with the trail map especially.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys did that sign, but whoever did it, maybe if it wasn't you guys, you should get with them so you're not reinventing
We'll
the
find
wheel.
out. I think we know the right people.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd just like to kind of reemphasize the fact that this proposed policy is a an example of permissive regulation. The point was made, and I want to reemphasize it, that if we went with the current municipal code, dogs would not be allowed anywhere on parks or open space land. So those of you concerned about too much regulation should probably appreciate that this is a permissive policy. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Donna?
You know, there seems to be a lot of concern about there's now only, if this passes, there's only going to be 6 parks that allow dogs off leash. I'd like to find another community in this country of this size that has more than 1 or 2 dog parks that allows dogs off leash. I think 6 parks in a community of this size is going to be phenomenal.
Donna, towards that, I did some research, and in most communities of 100,000 people, they have like 3.5 dog parks for every 100,000. So we are really leading ahead of the country, if you will, because what do we have, 60, 70,000 people, and we're going to have 6? So I think we're going to be a community that others could look to.
Plus our open space.
Exactly.
Plus all of our open space.
Okay, procedurally, would we make motions and vote for parks and then open space, or separately? I guess it's a question for Ben.
Since it's a joint meeting, I think that you can make one motion and then have each board vote separately.
Okay. What's that?
Yeah, that's not the agenda.
Open spaces and trail. Just tonight. Well, that's the way I understood. That's because I'm off the mic.
Yeah, yes. Do I have a motion?
I'll wing it.
Anyone can make the motion, and then we'll vote separately, is my understanding.
Yeah,
Is that right, Ben?
So on
Yeah.
one motion.
Yes.
Okay. With the modification that Director Budge mentioned about the definition of voice command,
Do you want me to clarify those for you?
please.
Yeah, there was two.
So we need to modify the voice command, voice control definition to be consistent with the city code.
Could you
speak up? Sure. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director, modifying the voice control, voice command definition to be consistent with the city code. Adding don't harass wildlife to section 3.2, and then the subsection is 3.2.2 about under responsibility of dog owners. And I think those were all the amendments.
Okay. With those corrections or additions, I move to recommend the draft dog rules and regulations policy to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll
second.
Okay. That was
Caldwell.
Supervisor Schutte or
Dave?
Caldwell.
Caldwell? Okay. All right. Any additional comments? Yes.
I think all in all, this is a good draft. I can see some potential tweaks that will take place and are already taking place with the amendment. But I also just want to speak to some of the comments, the you guys comment. You know, we are all part of this community, and this is really, the effort here is to help make this community or continue to allow this community to be a wonderful place for everyone. And these rules and regulations policy, just like we were saying, currently the policy is no dogs allowed anywhere, and so this is opening it up. I understand that dogs have been in many places, But what this does is it really does allow more people to be able to kind of plan where they want to go. And especially if they have dogs, where a great place to go would be. And if they don't have dogs, or if they have children, or if they themselves are fearful of dogs, then they also know where they can go. And so I think it's a way to be respectful as a community, to kind of look out for each other.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with open space since you're missing a
I've got
member.
comment.
Yes.
Let me make a comment. My last chance, and I pushed it and it worked. My last chance. I really think we're disrespecting the river here, and I'm so absolutely kind of bummed out that absolutely, I don't have any trouble with dogs on a leash on the river corridor, but running and playing in the river just bums me out. I think we just did something terrible for something we worked so long and so hard to establish that corridor over many years, and then we just disrespect it. So I'm going to vote nay, but I'm just one vote, and thank you.
Okay, yes, Casey.
Can I was just looking back through all the data on this, and with respect to the riparian areas, I share some of your concern, as well as the public comment about the nesting to protect the riparian areas from dogs going into the water. But I also noted in the original draft that in several sections, and in particular the ones I found, 3.1.3 and 4.9.1.1, there is language there that the department shall close off areas during nesting, but it doesn't restrict the time frame for which that area is closed off. I mean, nesting is pre and post nesting as well. So there's nothing there delineating or defining what the time period is for that. So I think that this allows that with the course of time, if the concern for dogs interfering is shown to be a real concern over time, I think that this allows for the department to be able to protect those riparian areas, and in particular the wildlife there. So I share your concern, but I think there's language in here to help us manage it in the future.
Okay.
I forgot, I was going to ask staff between the meetings, what are the Silver Oak paths? Since I live there.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. It's the sidewalk system within the development.
So that's the city-owned property that, yeah.
The public sidewalk
that
system.
animal control controls then?
So animal control, we have contracted through the Humane Society. The whole city is their jurisdiction.
Right.
So if there's areas where we're concerned, or maybe Highway 50 or certain areas, I think we could defer back to the animal control codes, which is under Title VII, and it talks about voice control or under a leash. So if someone can't manage that, animal control would be able to step in and deal with that issue.
Because they got taken off the leash on those sidewalks, I thought, if it's sidewalks.
Well, currently city code says they could do that. It's on a leash or under voice control in the animal codes.
Okay, any other comments? And we have a motion and a second, so I'll call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passed. I'll turn it over to you, Kurt.
Thank you for the motion in the second. So over here on the Park and Recreation Commission side, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Leah, did you get your?
I voted yes. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay, so now we're on to item 6 for discussion only, Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. Just a couple updates. We did interview for the Arts and Culture Supervisor position. We'll hopefully be making an offer and make that official soon. We've also interviewed for the Recreation Coordinator for Sports. Those are both 2 brand-new positions the board approved for this fiscal year. And then just a shameless plug that we are hiring for all of our part-time seasonal positions, lifeguards, youth, park maintenance, you name it. We have great job opportunities available, and we have increased all of our rates of pay. So you can go to carson.org/jobs and apply. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Item 7, members' announcements.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I would like to bring up a comment. Thank you, Jennifer, for stating that you have a lot of positions open. There's been a lot of conversation on social media regarding picking up garbage and just lack of, and a lot of things that aren't being done. And truly, I've had the opportunity to go to meetings and places with other states and agencies across the country. The number one thing that is always brought up is workforce and not able to fill positions. And I know that you have brought to this board many times in the budget that you have new positions, you're trying to find people, it takes a long time, you're not getting people. So I just wanted to put it out there that it's hard to get people, and to thank you all and all of you and your staff for coming to work and having the passion that you have and the time that you're taking to do all of this. So just really appreciated it and connecting it to there's a need for people, and if people want something done, they can step up and do it, or there's lots of jobs open. So thank you.
I was wondering if we could explore a partnership with the university system for these part-time positions, and to, when people are hired for these jobs, that they could earn a credit or two in certain fields. There's no reason that they should not be able to. And I know years ago when I worked for state parks as well, I could do that through the through UNR. And I think that's gone away. I don't know why. But I really think because we have such a shortage, and I know the city and the state cannot afford to pay maybe as much as In-N-Out Burger, they can offer that incentive to a lot of kids who are going into these fields. And if we could form a partnership like that, where they would earn credit, it might sweeten the pot, and perhaps more people would apply. Thank you.
Okay. No other interesting comments. We are item 7, members' announcements and requests for information. Arts folks? Yes. Lisa?
Sorry, I'll be brief. I went to the NACO National Conference last month, and I attended the Park and Recreation and Art presentation, and it was really amazing, and so much of what we've talked about tonight really coincided with that. One area that I really thought was so interesting and I hadn't thought about is the different uses of parks. And so I think of parks as, you know, this big open area where you can play and run, and but there are some communities that actually a park in their particular area of town or in the community is a place to go for organized sports, organized recreation. And I only bring this up to once again highlight that we all look at we look at the world through our own lens, and whether it's park or trail usage or open space or how, animals should be managed and protected. We all look at it through our own lens. And so it was really eye-opening and an aha moment, like, oh, wait a sec, yes, there's parks have many definitions to many people. So it was awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone else? Yes, Susan?
We talked about budget, and we approved or looked at a draft budget. Could we get a final budget, or at a next meeting to see how it all played out?
We can definitely do that, and everything that you guys recommended for the open space budget in particular was all approved by the board.
Okay.
Okay, future agenda items. Anyone have any? Yes, Mark?
Jen knows this, but you guys don't know this open space. I've been in front of the foundation to talk about awards. Remember, I've talked about us giving awards to people in the community that are given, and they're willing to be the foundation to gather the funds to pay for those awards because they have to be paid for.
Which foundation?
The Parks Foundation. So I went to their meeting, and the reason I did is because they already have an awards for outdoor recreation, but I didn't want to conflict with that, and the staff didn't want me to do it, which makes sense. They're totally willing, but I want to get your permission before I go to the next foundation meeting, so it needs to be on the agenda next time, is what I'm saying. A short explanation for discussion, and then we can decide then, and then I can explain it better. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know, Mark, the TTT, do we want to announce about the TTT? Tourism, Trails, Transportation, Tourism.
Oh, you can, sure.
Yeah.
In November.
In
Yeah,
November.
Greg knows about it.
Greg knows about it, yeah. In November, we will, Mark and I are working on, we're part of the team working on, Greg's part of the team working on the Transportation, Trails, and Tourism Summit, which is sponsored by NDOT and Eastern Sierra Trails Coalition. And this, we didn't have it the last 2 years because of COVID, and it'll be in November 9th.
4th and 5th. Maybe it is 8th and 9th.
4th, 5th, and
8th and 9th? Oh, it's all right.
Yeah. It's
Sorry.
in November. It's free to attend, and it's going to be a great summit. And so if you want any information, you can talk to Mark, Greg, or I about going to it. And it's a great event, and we're going to have speakers on
Where's it going to be?
Huh?
The Renaissance.
the Renaissance this year. So, and I probably am going to put together out there, we're going to have some outdoor things, and I probably will put a tour of the V&T here in town.
Okay.
So,
Greg, did you have the dates? Okay, 8 through 10? Okay, thanks. All right, thanks. Any other announcements? Yes?
I have a possible agenda item for Director Budge. I can get her attention. I know. Director Budge, this is a request for, if it would not impact the work and delay anything, I would like to see an agenda item just for discussion of an update on the Mills Park Master Plan revision. But I don't want that to hinder any work that's ongoing. So if that's possible, maybe just something brief, just so we know. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else over here? Future agenda items or announcements?
I had an announcement. I thought I missed the window.
No.
Yeah, Jennifer confirmed for me that they're gonna begin doing the renovation of Ross Gold's tennis courts this weekend. Yes, finally. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so,
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, way over here. Hi. Yeah, I have a personal announcement. There's been a change in my family household, and I would love to be able to continue with OSAC, but I think it's going to be difficult for me to do that. I'm happy to discuss it privately off mic, but not in public. So I just wanted you all to know that that's going to affect my ability to be in OSAC, so.
sorry to hear that. Okay, so public comments. The public is invited this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. I guess we do things differently. Open space, we just adjourn, whereas,
All right.
okay. I've been advised that. What? Yes. So we are adjourned.
You should see the other guy.
Yeah.